I got a very, very interesting article from. Actually, it was given to me by a subscriber, Sam Freedom, from the Business Insider, regarding Russia is massing troops on northern Iran's border. Maybe not quite yet. See this purple area up here? This is actually Russia. Okay, and what they're going to do is bring them through Georgia, which Georgia is going to say no. Then into Armenia. And I think because George is going to say no, but I think there's another game going on there too because Putin hates the president of Georgia, and he might use this all as an excuse to get him out, one way or the other by basically killing him probably. That's usually the Putin style. But this actually is an extremely important story. I got it from the Business Insider from one of the subscribers who mentioned Sam Freedom. Now, I think that this has a lot of implications, but it's really over not politics, not over religion. It's over money and resources, and the resources are oil. Now, I want to point out that Putin has been alleged to be possibly the richest man on earth. I noticed they said things back a few years ago, up to $50 billion. Now they're saying $60, $70 billion. And supposedly he's a large shareholder in 3 huge oil companies in Russia, and also tied in with Swiss trading houses. And of course, they all deny this, and people investigate things and different things like that. There's problems that comes. There's always a stumbling block. But considering Putin's lavish lifestyle, I know I mentioned that he's got 180,000 plus in watches, alone that he wears, that people see him out and about with. Kind of tells you his wealth is a hell of a lot more than, that was one of the mentions in this. I'm going to post this article, also luxury accommodations. It's quite obviously, and also about Gunvor or Russia's oil giant. Now, it's quite obvious if you just look at even the pomp and ceremony of his last inauguration. Anybody that does not, you could say that's all about Russian pride and Russian state and all that type of stuff, but that ceremony must have cost a ridiculous amount of money. But it's being presented to the people like, I don't know, it's propaganda basically. But I viewed it as something that had 10 times the pomp and ceremony of the Nazis. This guy is an egotistical megalomaniac to the max, and he's got no limits on power, but he sure knows how to play the honest peasant look. I really don't buy it myself. Now, also there's a related article here about Putin and a $100 million deal that disappeared, about him having some houses being built for different things, food for oil. And actually this lady here who had the records on it, she died not long after she was interviewed. Maybe it was 2 weeks after. Interesting. I have to point that out. Now, I also want to point out something about George Soros. We all know, and before I get into this article, because actually I want to comment on a couple of things angles and things that people don't realize. I'm not a fan of George Soros, but I also noticed he's got a good side to him too. Everybody does. I'm not sure where Putin's good side is, because I think it's all an act. This guy was in secret police, the KGB, and he knows how to play the game. I think this is a very, very, very cold person, and he knows how to play that innocent boy peasant type, I'm one of the people things. And there's too many people buying into it, which kind of aggravates me because I wish people could see this. But I just want to comment a little more on George Soros, though. Even though I don't like George Soros, he's got some sides to him that I do like. I know he's anti-American. I don't like that part about him. But he does point out that Russian oligarchs today, and I'm assuming that includes Putin, are just as bad or worse than even like the robber barons that were in the United States in the 19th century, and even today. in the West. We have our robber barons that are in the West, and he's against that type of thing. He's actually against that type of thing. Now, I kind of look at George Soros and I say to myself, well, he's kind of a robber baron too. He's a scammer, basically. He knows how to wheel and deal. But he seems to have some of these underlying principles, or thinks he has them anyway. So I can't say I disagree with George Soros 100%. And I like how he points out about the robber barons being in Russia, and also they are just like the robber barons in the West that have existed since the 19th century. So I think that's a point to be, shown that it's true. It's true. And I think Putin probably is the worst of the worst. Now, what's behind Russia massing troops in northern Iran? Obviously, it's Putin behind that, and I think it has a lot to do with two things: oil, and also getting rid of his person he hates that runs Georgia, the president of Georgia, and actually giving her a reason to crush him and oust him, kill him, or whatever he's got to do. That's probably what's going on. This is the article from the Business Insider, and I want to comment, as far as like inside information from Pastor Lindsey Williams. You're getting better information from the Business Insider. It's just a standard article. I want to highlight some of the main points on them, comment on them. I kind of already did somewhat, but and also want to point out it's realistic information. It's things that are concrete facts. I don't like Cliff High's web bots, and I think that stuff is lunacy, but sometimes I pay attention to it a little bit. But, there's a web bot out there talking about the Israeli mistake, that they might attack and jump the gun first. And I don't really need to be a web bot person to realize that might be something that could happen, but I don't think it is. I think it's going to be in concert and coordinated with the United States, because it looks like Israel is holding back and they're playing the cards correctly, and this is going to work out despite probably this big drama story. Because I think what's going on here, if they move in Iran, Russia, it's almost like they think you're going to be a clash with the U.S. over this Iran. I think it has more to do with him knocking out the Georgia president, which he hates. But Putin's going to play this up to the max, believe me. So let me get into this article real quick. Russia is massing troops on Iran's northern border and waiting for a Western attack. The Russian military anticipates that an attack will occur in Iran by the summer 2012 and has developed an action plan to move Russian troops through neighboring Georgia to stage in Armenia, which borders the Islamic Republic, according to the informed Russian sources. Russian Security Council head Viktor Azarov said that Russian military headquarters has prepared an action plan in the event of attack on Iran. Iran is our neighbor. If Iran is involved in any military action, it is a direct threat to our security. Now, I want to point out again, all that talk doesn't mean a damn thing about their security and all that kind of stuff. They know it doesn't have a damn thing to do with their security. If anything, if there's any kind of other interest, and I think the main thing is they have a reason to go through Georgia. I think this is the main thing. But the secondary thing is, any way you could trip up the United States, you want to do that too, because they're playing very intramural hardball, even though the Russian leaders are in on a new world order. Don't let anybody fool you that Putin is totally in on a new world order, except, the way I read Putin, he would love to be the top dog, and he would kick the West down in 2 seconds flat, the Western leaders too. But actually, that is not going to do anybody good. I know maybe a Russian might cheer that on, but you know what? If he's got, I want to say right now, I think he does have $70 billion. He's not going to give crap to the Russians. If he tried to give anything to the Russians, he would try to get it from the West for free and give it to the Russians. But good luck trying to get it from the West, because I'm going to tell you right now, if there was ever a war that was serious between the West and, say, the Russian nation, you got a major problem. Because, on paper, you talk about there's so many troops and all this kind of garbage. Well, in reality, the United States is an armed citadel to the max. Yeah, you'll see the lethargic, Twinkie-eating couch potatoes turn into some of the most vicious animals you can ever imagine, and they're going to annihilate you. So don't even bother with trying to get anything out of the West to give to the Russian peoples, Putin. I'm telling you that right now. Because for every one that was knocked out in the West, there's going to be 1,000 of you guys dead. And I can make good on that promise myself. That's no problem. Easily. So Russian Defense Ministry sources said that the Russian military doesn't believe that Israel has sufficient military assets to defeat Iranian defenses, and further believes that U.S. military action will be necessary. And Israel is playing it very smart. The only problem is this Obama clown. Not call him a clown because he's basically against Israel. I'm going to flat out say that. He is. And he's playing a dangerous game in that way, but he's showing what he is. And the way I look at it is you got to either be, well, do what the hell you want, Obama, but, I would not exactly consider Obama's moves to be extremely bright in a lot of ways, because I don't know what kind of game he is playing, but quite obviously Israel feels that Obama would actually tip off Iran if Israel was to actually make an attack coordinated with the United States. But I think there's enough elements in the United States military that are working with Israel that this attack will be very well coordinated with American and Israeli forces, and it will take out the nuclear facilities that Iran is so desperately trying to make, which have aggressive intentions. Now, the reason I know they have aggressive intentions, because I said before, to make some electricity, the route they're going with uranium is the most expensive route possible. And you consider the sanctions and everything else that's going on. They are without a doubt attempting to get nuclear weapons, which will lead to an arms race in the Middle East. So this is the best course of action. Now, Russia goes on. It will assist Iran in the event of any such attack. Sources said that the Russian military buildup in the region could result in Russian military potentially engaging Israeli U.S. forces or both. Maybe. But it's very difficult to say if that's going to happen or not, because I still think part of the whole game on here is for Putin to get into Georgia and knock out that person he can't stand. But if he goes into Iran, basically it's going to be over oil interest. The latest information comes from a series of reports and leaks from official Russian spokesmen and government news agencies who say that the Israeli attack is all but certain by summer. That could be. But it's not the first time I heard things that are going to be certain that didn't happen. But it seems to be. Families of the Russian servicemen from the Russian base of I can't say that, in Armenia, close to the border of Georgia and Turkey, have already been evacuated. Now that actually tells you something. See, actually, I think Putin wants this to happen, so he's got an excuse to go into Georgia. That, I think, is really what's going on here. The Russians believe that Georgia would cooperate with the United States in blocking any supplies from reaching Military Base 102, which is now supplied primarily by air. Right now, Georgia blocks the only land transportation route through which the Russian military supplies could travel. These sources report that new command and control equipment has been deployed in the region capable of using the Russian GPS system GLONASS for targeting information. So they're helping, they'll be helping Iran and stuff. There has been speculation that given the improved relations between Israel and Azerbaijan, the Jewish state may use bases for which to launch air attacks on neighboring Iran's nuclear sites. Israel recently agreed to sell Azerbaijan $1.6 billion in military equipment, and they need that to defend themselves against Iran. Azerbaijan needs that military equipment to defend themselves against Iran. They have basically like a tense truce with Iran, even though they're basically of the same religion and everything. There's no difference that much. It's that Iran would consider Azerbaijan part of a greater Persia. Don't let anybody fool you into thinking people don't have aggressive intentions. Once they got the military backing to do and act upon what they think, they will do it. They will do it. Iran will do that too. And actually, that is why they're looking for these nuclear materials. It's not for peaceful purposes. As I stated, they had 100 years worth of natural gas, and they got many, many decades of crude oil. There's only less than 2 decades worth of uranium left for nuclear fuel, and you're going through the most expensive possible way of making electricity. It's crazy. Bullshit. That's all I got to say. You know what it is. So you know what they're doing. Now, the question is, should they have a nuclear weapon? Well, if they're going through all this trouble to get a nuclear weapon that bad, I don't think it's for peaceful purposes. And say it was, you know what's going to happen then? You're going to have Saudis going to have one. So the whole area is a mess then. So stop them from having a nuclear weapon. Putin has made no secret that he despises Saakashvili, and that his return to the presidency may consider taking out the Georgia president as unfinished business. Just as in 2008, Putin will not have to worry about if he sends Russian troops into Georgia, since there was immediate reaction from the U.S. and European countries to the Russian invasion and subsequent occupation. That's difficult to say. There's always things going on behind the scenes, whether they officially do something or not. But I think that's the whole key to what's going on here. I think that they're amassing troops on the Russian border because Putin wants to knock out this Russian president. He can't stand him. He despises him. And while he's doing that, he's going to try to embarrass and threaten the West as much as possible. And, if whatever else could possibly come out of it, he's just going to get more wealthy. Because, say, for instance, this particular conflict goes to the advantage of Russia, maybe it'll establish better ties with Iran. And, it's always been the contention that Iran would establish a oil bourse in the Middle East, an oil market. It's been going on for years. It's been since 2007. It's been, supposedly the start, but nobody really partakes into it that much. But centered around Russia basically too, and also used, there's even though it's ludicrous right now to even suggest that the Russian ruble will be a world reserve currency. It is a dream. It is a dream of Russian leaders that Russia will be on top, and working with Iran through the oil industry and through the financial markets. Those are always stepping stones to goals that are dreams. So that's the whole game that's going on. But I just want to point out though that Putin, and he's actually calling the shots on all this stuff with the policy in Russia as far as amassing troops on the border of Russia by northern Iran. He really wants to take out the president of Georgia because he hates his guts. I'll just put it plain and simple. Putin hates the president of Georgia's guts. He wants to take him out. And he's going to go through Georgia when he gets, if he goes into northern Iran. So that's the whole game. And if anything else comes out of it, there's always going to be deals with oil. And that is where he's got most of his money from. And Iran has plenty of natural gas and oil. So it's all over money and power, and he plays like the innocent boy peasant, which I don't know how many people buy that in Russia or not. I assume a lot of younger people do, because they haven't been around. I think a lot of the older people probably realize what's going on with Putin. He's the same game has always been going on. Unfortunately, most people will be fooled, but it does look like there will be an attack fairly soon on Iran, and I was thinking late spring or sometime mid to late spring. So already it's mid-spring, but they're talking attack will happen by summer. That's what this latest word is. Possibly. It's a little bit of an older article, but still it's very, very, very pertinent. And I just want to point out again, the Business Insider is probably more relevant, better information that you can ever get from Pastor Lindsey Williams. In my opinion, anyway, I think the Business Insider is much better information, and it gives you more solid, true core facts that are based upon reality, and you're ever going to get from Cliff High's Webbots. So, but I just want to get this out here on YouTube with some of my own opinions and twist on things, what it really is going on behind the scenes. And I think the main objective here, besides money and oil and power for Putin, is to get rid of his despised adversary, the president of Georgia. That is going to be the goal.